Very Bad Wizards is a podcast with a philosopher, my dad, and a psychologist, Dave Pizarro, having an informal discussion about issues in science and ethics. Please note that the discussion contains bad words that I'm not allowed to say, and knowing my dad, some very inappropriate jokes.
It's a land that God, if he exists, has created in anger.
The great and boss has spoken. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
Who are you? Who are you? A very bad man.
I'm a very good man. Good man. They think deep thoughts, and with no more brains than you have.
Pay no attention to that man.
Anybody can have a brain.
You're a very bad man.
I'm a very good man. Just a very bad wizard.
Welcome to Very Bad Wizards. I'm Tamler Summers from the University of Houston. Dave, yesterday was my birthday. I turned 55, which is ridiculous and unacceptable on every level. Speaking of birthdays, yours is coming up soon, too. How old are you going to be?
I'm in my 40s currently, so I don't know what I was going to be nice to you and not bring up the actual age that you turned, because I know. Knew it might be.
It's a terrible age, actually. I was thinking like 56 is better than 55. I feel like 56 is like an honest age. Like it's like a strong age to be, but 55 just is old and shitty.
I'm turning the big 50 in September. Mm-hmm. I'm having trouble dealing with it.
Are you doing anything? Like having a party?
Probably not anything big. I was invited by a dear friend of mine to travel to go to a rap concert, but it feels kind of like I don't want to leave my kids, like on the actual day of.
Yeah.
But I'll figure something out. My life is boring, man. Hopefully I'll do something. I'll like have 2.5 drinks and maybe watch a movie.
Well, you're embracing what it means to be a 50-year-old, I guess.
All right. Happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you.
And I will transition us right into this because I was thinking of this, in fact, as kind of something for your birthday to do in the intro segment. But before we get to that, do you want to say what we're talking about?
Yeah, with record speed, we are doing an episode that was voted on by our beloved Patreon supporters on Arthur Schopenhauer, and in particular, these 2 essays in his studies on pessimism. The first is on the sufferings of the world, and then also a very short essay on the vanity of existence. Yeah, so we'll be talking about that. I think it's kind of in our sweet spot of stuff to talk about.
Absolutely. And I know what you're talking about, record time. We're always so responsive about this stuff.
Yeah, like with Joseph Campbell. Well, I mean, what was that? That was probably like
we went through a whole hero's journey in between the time that it was voted in.
And that was part of it. That's what people didn't get, I think, is...
That's exactly planned. This is all planned. This is all meticulously organized. For 13 and a half years, we've been planning every single little detail.
Yeah, it's a piece of like just incredibly complex performance art. But for Schopenhauer, I think he kind of reminds us that everything is fleeting and we're always one day closer to death.
It's very apt.
Yeah, very apt. So what are we doing for my birthday, allegedly?
So for your birthday opening segment, this is an idea that I had a while ago because I just thought it would be fun to hear your take on this. So this is a blind ranking game. So for those of you who aren't familiar, we're going to have you blind rank 10 movie or film directors, I should say. The idea is that you have no idea what the list of 10 directors I've prepared beforehand is, nor, of course, what order they would be in. And one at a time, when I give you a name, you have to put them in a slot, 10 being the worst on the list, 1 being the number 1 on the list, not knowing what's going to come next, only knowing, obviously, what you've already ranked. And there you fill out the entire 10 slots. Yeah. At the end, we take a look at how
I did?
Yeah. Does this reflect what you would have wanted to do or how you would have ranked them? And so the fun in it for me is to come up with a list of directors that would make this interesting, right? So I'm not just going to give like top 10 directors of all time because that's sort of boring.
That's the fun for you. What's the fun for me? It sounded like this isn't your birthday.
The fun for you is I've given you an entire opening segment to wax philosophical about cinema. Directors of cinema. Maybe cinema is not an apt word to describe some directors on this list.
Okay, that's good to know. So I'd never heard of this, and at first I thought you were just going to like give me 10 and I could just rank them and we talk about them. I was like, sure. Right. But then when you explained the game to me, I saw that this is actually going to be, both fun and torturous.
Yeah, it's the second opening segment in a row where you have weird feelings about it.
But I do love that you're thinking of gimmicks for opening segments.
We got to do something. We got to keep the relationship.
We can't just keep... Yeah, we got to spice up the relationship.
This is like trying anal in year 23 of a marriage.
Toys, role play.
This is me coming home telling you I've been wearing beads all day. No.
And I have really no idea how to do this well. Yeah. So I'm going to hopefully we'll do this. People will like this and we'll get to do more of these. I have some good ideas for you, like rappers, producers.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, rappers would be, I think, fun.
Yeah.
And we'll learn as we go. And my prediction, Tamler, no editing necessary from now on.
Okay.
For the entire...
Good.
All right. 10 to 1. 1 being the top of the list, 10 being the bottom of the list. Let's start. Akira Kurosawa.
Oh, God. See, that's already... Now, can I just get a couple things straight? Yes. This is going to be my favorite directors, right?
Yeah.
It's not like who I consider the best. I mean...
No.
Yeah.
Well, whatever you would make
ranking.
as a list of your top. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can shit on Kurosawa if that's what you're about to do.
I'm not. I love Kurosawa. And I in some ways, he might be the director with the most great movies who's ever lived. It's like him and Billy Wilder probably are the two that have just made so many, at least that I've seen that I love, and maybe Kubrick.
And super influential.
Yeah. Sergio Leone just stole Jimbo and made A Fistful of Dollars, which I absolutely love. And, Spike Lee is about to come out with a remake of High and Low, which is have you seen High and Low?
Yeah, I watch High and Low.
I will say, though, he's probably not my favorite director, but I can't imagine I will think he's too low if I put him at 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. I wanted to start with a strong one. All right. Paul Verhoeven.
Oh, nice. That's a good one. You know that I love Paul Verhoeven. I love a lot of his movies. I think RoboCop is phenomenal. A lot of his movies are fun, even if they're not good. I just watched Showgirls.
I was about to say Showgirls.
Showgirls is kind of good.
Yeah, it's had a resurgence.
Yeah. And then Elle is really good. The French one with Isabella Huppert. Okay, but see, this is where I don't know. But he's not anywhere near my top 10 of all time directors. So I'm going to put him, and I don't know how low you're going to sink, but I'll put him at 5.
Okay, safe. You're playing it safe.
Playing it safe for that one, yeah.
Greta Gerwig. Now, there's a reason I put her on the list.
Because she's a woman?
Yes, because Nikki told me I had to have a woman.
Yeah. So, I want to be clear that I love women and I love female directors. I haven't really liked any of her movies that I've seen that much. I thought Lady Bird was good, but not, for me it was like a 3.5 star on Letterboxd or something like that. And Barbie I thought was fine, and what's her other one? Little Women, I don't think I saw. So I will put her at 9.
Okay.
And I might regret not putting her at 10. I doubt I'll regret. I can't imagine. Well, you know what? Let me put her at 10, actually. No offense to women. I just can't imagine. I just don't really like a single one of her movies. None of her movies are 4 stars for me, so.
Okay. Alfred Hitchcock.
Jesus Christ.
It's hard.
It's hard. I guess I'll put him at... Would I put him behind, if I'm being honest, Kurosawa? Yeah, I mean, I have to. But you want to have the one spot open for a while, but not for too long. All right, I'm going to put him at 3.
3, okay.
He has, speaking of someone who has just so many good movies. Yeah, like him, Kurosawa.
Yeah. Would you say he's as influential? It's weird because Kurosawa's been bitten so hard so much. And I don't know if Hitchcock, people have remade his films, and certainly he's been influential in many ways. But Kurosawa feels like the West decided they could steal his ideas in a way that they couldn't do with Hitchcock.
Yeah, I mean, but I do think he's been very influential. Like, I think the whole MacGuffin as a trope, and I think he's been very influential just because of that book with Truffaut, where, they go through all of his movies. And so I think he's revered, and probably like a lot of the, the filmmaking stuff has been copied. I don't think he's been as influential as Kurosawa or as revered. Also, because he just made just a bunch of kind of forgettable movies that nobody really talks about. Because he was just, he was such a pro, and he just made so many movies. So I'll put him at 3. I might wish I had put him at 4, but I think 3 is a good spot for him now.
I should have said this at the beginning. I did not put Lynch on this list, sort of to save you the feeling the whole time whether or not I was going to say David Lynch.
Spring David Lynch, and I have to slot him at 7 or something like that. Yeah.
I thought that would just be hurtful.
Yeah, what did you say? Lynch is RSTLNE. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's just assumed. Okay. Kurosawa, Verhoeven, Gerwig, Hitchcock, PTA, Paul Thomas Anderson.
Ooh. He's kind of very different than Hitchcock in that all of his movies are at least good, are at least 4 stars. And some of them are great. So, I'll put him in 4. He's definitely, I like him more than Verhoeven, as much as I love Verhoeven. So PTA goes at number 4. He has a movie coming out.
Yes, I'm very excited about it. I saw a preview for it.
Yeah, another Pynchon adaptation of Vineland, but it's going to be like on IMAX. It should be super cool.
Crazy.
Yeah.
That guy just does not have a bad movie in him.
No. Eliza and I saw Weapons yesterday, and we saw a trailer for it's One Battle After Another is what the new PTA movie. And it wasn't the greatest trailer, and it didn't give you a great sense. And she said, is this going to be bad? And that's exactly what I said. Like, he doesn't make bad movies.
Yeah.
He doesn't make not good movies.
It's incredible. It's like us in podcasts, really, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. The consistency. It kind of is, though. And also, let PTA try making 315 movies.
Seriously, PTA.
Yeah. Asshole.
All right, M. Night Shyamalan. Do you get a wish you had been nicer to Gerwig?
No, because I don't think Greta Gerwig has a even close to as good a movie, at least in my judgment, than The Sixth Sense or that kind of covers it for me with him. So.
It bought him a lot of goodwill. Invincible is good too. It was just sort of ruined.
You mean Unbreakable?
Unbreakable. It was just sort of ruined by the sequels. Like, if it had just stayed as a standalone, I think it would have been.
Yeah. Yeah, it was good. I have a lot of friends that love that movie, and I didn't love it, but I only saw it the once. And so I'm going to comfortably put him at 9. With no regrets about him being ahead of Greta Gerwig. And Greta Gerwig might have some much better movies coming. And then, she can look forward to rising in the rankings.
And I don't think Shyamalan probably does. Coppola.
Oh, see, this is the first time I'm fucked here.
You got Kurosawa at number 2,
Yeah.
Hitchcock at number 3, PTA at number 4, Verhoeven at 5.
This sucks because I'm going to have to put him below Verhoeven, I think, in case, there's still some directors that could come up, but...
Not an unwise decision.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess I'll put him at 6, but that's tough because... I don't know. We just rewatched Apocalypse Now, and
so good.
It's fucking phenomenal. It's so good on every level. I can't wait for us to do it.
Oh, God, we haven't done that.
No.
Oh, yeah. I'll do it next episode.
Nice.
I mean, that's such a good movie. So, 2 things. Obviously, this game is tailor-made to make you have shitty feelings like this. Mm-hmm. But to Coppola, there are a lot of films like you haven't even seen by Coppola.
Yeah. There's like 100. Or not 100, but
and
pretty much. I don't think I'm not sure I saw anything after. No, that's not true. I saw Peggy Sue Got Married and those, kind of 80s movies. But I didn't even see the Bram Stoker's Dracula. So, what I kind of liked was The Outsider. With The Outsiders, those 2 movies that he did in the 80s. I don't know.
I never saw.
But his 70s run is ridiculous. The 2 Godfathers sandwiched in between The Conversation and then Apocalypse Now is insane. Yeah.
Yeah, the Godfather's sort of by you. And Apocalypse Now. Like those, God, if only he had made 3 movies.
No, 4, because The Conversation is brilliant.
Oh, The Conversation is very good, yeah.
And Megalopolis.
I loved Bram Stoker's Dracula, but I don't know that you would.
Maybe I would, like, I don't know.
It's its own thing, and I think it's great.
Did you see the Megalopolis?
No, I never did.
Yeah, I didn't.
Did
either.
you?
No,
Yeah.
I should have. I owed him that, I feel like.
Okay, things are going to get a little harder.
Oh, no.
Stanley Kubrick.
All right, I'm going to regret this, but there's no way I can put Stanley Kubrick as the 7th of these 10 or 8th. So he's got to go at number 1. But now, I've never done, for the listeners, I've never done this before. So, I'm now realizing that you don't want to leave 7 and 8 till the last. But Kubrick's got to go number 1. I love pretty much every single one of his movies. And even if he's not my absolute favorite, I'm very comfortable with him at number 1 because he's such a master. And I mean, even for this podcast alone, what have we done? Clockwork Orange, Eyes Wide Shut, which is just getting a Criterion release coming up, The Shining, and these were all really
2001.
fun. 2001. These were all really fun episodes too.
Yeah. He does not have a clunker in him.
No.
Although I never saw Barry Lyndon, to be honest.
Barry Lyndon is awesome. I love it. It's one of my favorites of his. It's it's a hangout movie in a lot of ways, even though it's a period piece that's phenomenally shot, but it's just funny and awesome.
Okay, so
Oh God.
Stanley Kubrick, number 1.
Yep.
You have slots 7 and 8 available. So this one.
This is gonna hurt. This is gonna hurt.
Well, I'll give you the less hurtful one now. Tarantino.
The less hurtful, so I'm gonna put him at
I
8.
know, I gave it away. Shit. God damn it.
Is Scorsese gonna?
rewind.
I didn't think you would have this many freaking masters on the list. All right, I'll put Tarantino at 8. Just because of what you say,
Scorsese. But I was about to call an audible and throw you a bone because there was one other director I had on this list that I could have tossed in there, but you made me pre-commit and not throw you an audible. I was going to give you Michael Bay.
That's when I would have felt bad about Greta Gerwig being the last one.
So Tarantino's at 8.
Scorsese's at 7. Yeah. So let me read the list for all the listeners who are wrapped right now. Stanley Kubrick at 1, Kurosawa at 2, Hitchcock at 3, PTA at 4, Verhoeven at 5. That was a little bit ambitious. Coppola at 6. Scorsese 7, ridiculous. Tarantino 8, Shyamalan 9, and Greta Gerwig is 10. You know the funny thing about Tarantino, much as I love him, that's not a terrible because the top 8 are so good, all of them. That's not the worst thing in the world. It's more the
and I say that as like a Tarantino stan.
I just thought you would throw in I don't know. Like someone who people like, but it's not my thing as much, like Edgar Wright or something like that. I thought you'd throw more of those in. So
this is it was a hard thing for me to do.
Yeah. It's actually not that bad, this list, except that Scorsese should be higher and Verhoeven should be lower. After that, though, it's I'm not sure what's so different about how I would actually rank these.
Coppola, I assume, would go above Verhoeven.
Coppola and Scorsese and probably Tarantino. Yeah, Tarantino would probably go against. So I'd put him down at 8.
So what I wasn't sure of is whether you would have Scorsese or Kubrick as your number 1, because I know you love Scorsese.
Yeah.
Or your true rankings or whatever.
Yeah. It would be tough, but I think I would put Scorsese just because throughout my life, I feel the most affection for his movies, most affection for him as a kind of a film person, just hearing him interviewed, any book, I kind of tear through books about him and his movies and making them. And I think Taxi Driver and Goodfellas and Raging Bull are incredible. And then the fact that he's still making movies that are great, when he's 80.
Yeah.
Killers of the Flower Moon.
Hear that, Coppola?
The Irishman. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a huge difference between them. Scorsese would definitely be higher than Coppola, even if maybe, I don't know if Scorsese's top 4. But Scorsese's top 4 are different than Coppola's, but they're still amazing.
Yeah. It's interesting because I don't know how to judge people who water down their body of work when their top product is undoubtedly, like, it makes lists of top movies of all time consistently, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, how much do you knock him for also making movies that nobody likes?
But he also, I feel like even his worst movies are still not at a level much higher than Coppola's worst movies or...
Scorsese's?
Yeah, Scorsese's. Like, you know, like he has just a bunch of movies like Shutter Island or After Hours that are still all really good. Like, yeah, and then Wolf of Wall Street is great. Like, it's like he produces like a truly great movie at least once a decade.
Yeah. I genuinely wasn't sure, like I said, about Scorsese, Kubrick, but you know what I really wasn't sure of was PTA. Would you move PTA below Coppola?
Yeah, probably. But it's close, I think, between those two. But I don't know. Like, he doesn't have a movie as good as Apocalypse Now or maybe The Two Godfathers, but close.
There Will Be Blood.
There
comes
will be
damn
blood.
Close.
Yeah, exactly. And then, you know, Coppola doesn't have anything as purely fun as Boogie Nights or, you know, Inherent Vice and Licorice Pizza, which I absolutely love. Did you see Licorice Pizza?
Yeah.
I was thinking as a California
such
person.
vibes. Yeah.
So I would have him probably, Scorsese would definitely be higher. I think I'd probably keep Hitchcock higher, which PTA I think would be fine with. But Coppola would be the one that I would have to battle. And if it was, I don't know, like it's tough because he's so consistent, but Coppola has maybe 3 better movies than his best. So,
yeah. So if I had put somebody like Ed Wood on the list.
Well, I haven't seen any actual Ed Wood movies. I've seen Ed Wood, the movie by Tim Burton. Tim Burton would be an interesting one, like someone like that.
Yeah, I consider Tim Burton too, yeah.
Yeah, there's some of his movies are really good, but he's never been fully for me, and he also puts out a lot of just dog shit.
I decided not that long ago that I was officially not a Tim Burton fan.
Yeah.
For some reason, it took me a long time to admit that. I think he was riding high on the 89 Batman, in my opinion.
Which is fun, yeah. And Edward Scissorhands is really good. But that's like he has surprisingly few like really good movies. Ed Wood, great.
Yeah.
Well, really, Scorsese is the only one I have terrible regrets for, and I put Verhoeven too high. But, you know, like I love Verhoeven, so enjoy.
Yeah. Good. Success. No edits needed.
All right. Well, maybe this was a counterexample to the nonstop misery and ceaseless pointless striving that we're going to talk about in the second segment. We'll be right back to talk about Schopenhauer.
What's up, y'all? What's up? This is Ghostface, straight from Staten Island. You know, I don't really mean no harm, but it just happens, you know, when I step approach a motherfucking whack and trying to spit his darts, can't spit him. Check it out, though. Hey, yo. Scientific, my hand kissing, erotic-listic, optimistic. You probably missed it. Watch me dolly thinking, Scotty Waddy competent me. Big microphone, hippie, Poughkeepsie, crispy chicken bars, my from the stone rich. Chop the O, sprinkle a little snow inside of Optimo. Swing the John McEnroe, rap rockin' mode, tiny mode, gun hole pro. Starsky with the gum show, hit the rump slow, promote kids, and Rapunzel. The tone stizzy really high, the vivid laser eye guy. Jump in a Harley rock, cross, I freak a lemon pie, bout it. Lord forgive me, Miss Sally shouted. Tracy got shot in the face, my house was overcrowded.
Welcome back to Very Bad Wizards. This is the time of the show that we take a moment to thank everybody for their support, and this is an episode where it feels like we should give extra gratitude to our listeners because we wouldn't have done this without you. So thank you. Thank you to everybody for all the ways in which you support us. If you want to message us, we love reading them. We don't always have time to respond, but you can reach us at verybadwizards@gmail.com, or you can tweet to us at Tamler, at Peas, or at verybadwizards. You can get in some arguments or discussions in the Reddit community, the subreddit, reddit.com/r/verybadwizards if you like. Follow us on Instagram. Tamler's in charge of that one, but it's always fun to see what he posts for each episode. You can rate or review us on Apple Podcasts, leave a comment on Spotify, or rate us there. Anything, if you'd like, as another way to reach out to us. We see those as well. And maybe, just maybe, I don't know if it actually helps other people see it, but maybe it does. If you want to support us in more tangible ways, you can always go to our website and you can click on the support tab and you can see the things that you can do. You can donate to us on PayPal, or you can buy some swag and get something in return. T-shirts, mugs. You can get lots and lots in return if you become one of our Patreon supporters, because there's tons and tons of content there that's not available to our regular audiences. So if you're not a supporter already and you want to be part of that group that helped us pick this episode, you can go there and join at $2 per month. And up, you get all our ad-free episodes, our back catalog of ad-free episodes, and you get access to my little beat collections, of which I just released recently, Beats Without Rhymes, Volume 9. So it's just a little thing to thank you for your support. At $5 per month and up, you get access to all of our bonus content. So this is what we often refer to as our bonus tier. That means you can listen to hundreds and hundreds of hours of us talking about movies and TV shows, having different guests on, our special limited edition podcasts like the Deadwood podcast that we did, or the Severance podcast with Paul. You can listen to our monthly Ask Us Anything responses. All that's there for just $5 per month and up. And maybe you don't want any of that stuff and you just want to support us because we give something nice to your life and you want to give something to us. We appreciate that as well. Of course, this is always going to be free, so no need to do that, but just know that we appreciate it. At $10 per month and up, you get to actually vote on an episode topic, and you get access to a couple of other things, including our Brothers Karamazov 5-part series, some of Tamler's lectures on Plato, and my intro psych lectures. And finally, at $20 and up, you get everything that we just said, but you also get to ask us a question for our monthly AUA episodes, of which we're about to record another one with tons and tons of questions. We always have fun. You get access to our video if you're in this group as well. So thank you, everybody, for all of the support that you've given us. We've been doing this shit for so long that Tamler was like in his 40s when we started. So it's been a long time. Thank you, everybody. And back to the episode.
All right, let's get to our topic for today. This is a topic chosen by our listeners, the winner of the first VBW Madness tournament.
That was great. We haven't talked about how that I feel like that was a success. I know it required extra work on your part, which I appreciate, but that was fun.
It was fun work, probably like making the list, you know, like, yeah, it was great. We got 16 topics and then had a little March Madness style tournament. And Schopenhauer, in particular, these two essays from, I guess, part of a larger work, which I won't try to pronounce, but maybe you as a German.
The Greek word for appendices and omissions.
Okay.
Parerga and paralipomena.
Yeah. These are two essays written very late in Schopenhauer's career, or at least published very late. He was about 10 years before he died in 1850. Schopenhauer is an interesting philosopher. He's like not someone that I ever studied in grad school, but it was definitely someone I had read about before I went to grad school. When I was reading a lot of Camus and a lot of the kind of, the 20th century existentialist philosophers. And then a lot of the free will deniers also would refer to Schopenhauer, and his view always seemed both super interesting, but also quite modern, quite 20th, 21st century. He's at a time in German philosophy. He's born in the late 1700s, and he's doing his major work in the early 1800s. And this is the time of Hegel, just after Kant and Fichte. I don't know how you pronounce that. Yeah, and he was always kept academic philosophy at arm's length.
Yeah, apparently he just had like a little nest egg left to him by his father, so he didn't have to work. Like, How awesome were those days for rich people?
It's funny, like he was supposed to go be like a merchant or something, and then his father died, probably from suicide. It sounds like when he was 17. In this sense, I feel like I have a little affinity because like my mom died when I was 17, and she was divorced from my father, and I was an only child. And while I didn't get anything like the amount of money that would allow me to not work for the rest of my life, like it appears from Schopenhauer, I did get enough to carry me for a few years. And that did allow me to kind of figure out what I want to do in a way that, I wouldn't have had otherwise. Another point of affinity, he hated philosophical writing. That was the thing he found Hegel to be kind of insufferable, and not only insufferable, but he thought he had an intellectual sin in his writing, a kind of willful obscurity.
I mean, I'm on Schopenhauer's side on this one, man.
It's hard. How could you not be, right? But I remember my playwriting teacher once said this was one of the greatest, the biggest insults that he had heard one playwright give another is willful obscurity. And it was exactly what Schopenhauer is accusing Hegel of, putting up a kind of smokescreen of dense terminology and convoluted sentences to make ideas seem more profound than they actually are. Yeah, I'm not a Hegel person, so I can't say to whatever degree he's right, but I certainly agree with him about the writing. Yeah, I think he was way ahead of his time in terms of the stuff. It's kind of remarkable how casual his atheism is in these two essays, and I think just how he was in general. I didn't know you could be like that in the early 1800s.
I guess if you didn't have to hold a job down. Yeah, but he gives props to Christianity in a way that I found surprising as an atheist.
But I think the mystical sides of Christianity, and of course, very few Western philosophers were as openly influenced by Hindu philosophy and Buddhist philosophy. Apparently, Schopenhauer was given some translation of the Upanishads very early in life and would read it before he went to bed. Every night he would read them. He thought they had some kind of almost superhuman power to cut to the depths of things, and later discovered Buddhist philosophy of various traditions, including the Mahamudra and stuff that is, again, there's some affinity, the more non-dual approaches in Buddhist philosophy. And I think in the essays we're covering today with his talk about ceaseless striving and suffering, it's clearly influenced there by Buddhist philosophy. And I can't think of any other philosopher at the time or even close that was incorporating Eastern thought so much into his view.
It kind of blows my mind when I think of what era he was writing in and that he was writing like this and about this.
Yeah, it's hard to think of, even with, Hume, who's obviously a very good writer, it's not as straightforward, at least in just the sentence structure as we get in Schopenhauer. Yeah. And, for Germans, they must have, they probably thought he was an alien or something. Wait, why can I just understand this sentence as it's written? Almost it's he's talking to me. What does that mean? They must have been completely flummoxed by that.
Reviewers were this is too clear, too clear.
Yeah. Exactly. Then, just to put a cherry on top of how modern I think he is, you get, obviously, I think Bergson in this idea of this will as a constant force, but then Camus, also evolutionary psychology. So this I came across, but he thought love was sort of a trick that nature played to get people to reproduce. This is before Darwin that he's coming up with this kind of Robert Frank commitment device explanation for love. And
I mean, it is kind of incredible. He clearly had some ideas that were pre-Darwin that were very close to the idea of natural selection. And Darwin was yeah. He was.
Yeah, because he thought I think a lot of people were focused on survival, but what he understood even pre-Darwin was that actually it's reproduction. That's the thing that is driving this force. And we do a lot to reproduce. He thought he was very interested in the sexual
He was
drive.
interested in the sex.
Yeah. But he didn't think it brought us much joy. It brought us a lot of striving and suffering, but not much beyond that. And similarly with animals just struggling to live. And this kind of leads to his pessimism that we're all doing this and it's not for our own purposes. It's for this just blind force that we're just caught up in. I want to maybe try to give a sense of the metaphysics, heavily influenced by, I think, a couple of the articles that we should link to, like on the Stanford Encyclopedia article and the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy article on him. I wanted to mention his relation to Kant, since we're a Kantian podcast now, and it seems like,
of course,
like that's what we talk about. So Schopenhauer, I think, had a lot of admiration for Kant's metaphysics and epistemology, agreed with him that the phenomenal world that we see, the phenomenal world that is presented to us, is not what the actual world is. It can't be said to describe things intrinsically. And Kant thought to even make sense of the world, we have to import our own categories like cause and effect and time and a kind of Euclidean space. And these are things that we bring to it as a way of organizing experience. But then whatever it is that's causing that experience, the noumena, the things in itself, that's beyond us. That's inaccessible to us. It's there, but we don't have any sense of what it is because we're bringing so much to the table in terms of our perception. And it's kind of interesting. So from what I can gather, he agrees with Kant that the phenomenal world presents itself in a way that is not how it actually is. And then on the one hand, also thinks, though, that Kant is biasing the noumenal world, the things in themselves, by making it seem like they're objects, at least, even if we don't know what kind of objects there is, or we don't have any way of describing what it is. Kant, according to Schopenhauer, thought they were things. And he didn't have a right to, which sounds right. But then there's a positive side where Schopenhauer was more optimistic in terms of our ability to understand, what's really going on. And I think this presages a lot of phenomenology in the 20th century. He thought we can get at what is actually going on through introspection, right? Through trying to really interrogate our own subjective experience. And through that, we can uncover not things in themselves, because I don't think he thinks the world is composed of things. It's more composed of, well, as he says, the will and representation. So the representation is what Kant thought, just the phenomenal world as it presents itself to us. But then also this force, this will that is driving all creatures. We are its most complex manifestation because we've developed reason in a way that other animals haven't. But, that has its good points and its bad points, and it certainly doesn't set us apart from the rest of the world. Everything, as far as I can gather, is animated by this will, a will to survive, a will to reproduce, a will to just fend off the forces that would try to annihilate us. So it's pretty easy to see that with animals and even with plants. But I think he really thought he would try to extend this as much as possible to like crystals and stuff like that. And I don't know the details of that. So I want to just now quote from the Stanford Encyclopedia article. He says, "At this point, what Schopenhauer has developed philosophical is surely interesting, but this is what's most remarkable. If we combine his claim that the world is will with his Kantian view that we are responsible for the individuated world of appearances, we arrive at a novel outlook, an outlook that depends heavily upon Schopenhauer's characterization of the thing in itself as will, understood to be aimless, blind striving." So the will, if you're understanding it as aimless, blind striving within this world of appearances that we individuate because of our categories, right? So then it says, thus marks the origin of Schopenhauer's renowned pessimism. He claims that as individuals, we are the anguished products of our own epistemological making, and within the world of appearances that we structure, we are fated to fight with other individuals and to want more than we can ever have. On Schopenhauer's view, the world of daily life is essentially violent and frustrating. It is a world that, as long as our consciousness remains at the level where the principle of sufficient reason applies in its fourfold root, that's what he did his doctorate on, it will never resolve itself into a condition of greater tranquility. So the metaphysics provides the basis for the pessimism in a kind of interesting way, I think.
That's super interesting. And it reminds me that, the parallels with this view and Freud are like huge, right? And apparently Freud just like didn't want to credit Schopenhauer or Nietzsche with influencing him at all. And I think we've talked about this when we talked about Nietzsche. But like clearly and obviously, this was an influence. There's no way that Freud could have avoided it. But like that the idea that there is this blind, impersonal striving that's making us unhappy is like at the heart of Freud. And especially when he got to his later life ideas on Thanatos and the sort of the death drive, it's so clearly that Schopenhauer like lays that out even in the essays we read, that like, at some point you just have the will to die.
Yeah, right. It's exhausting to be
too much.
It's
exactly.
Too much. And so, that's super interesting. And that is, when you're reading about the influences, like Freud is undeniable.
Now, Otto Rank, the greatest mind of all time. No.
As he demonstrated beyond any possibility of question. That's an inside joke about a previous winner, right?
Yeah.
That was
Denial of
Death. Yeah. So that takes us to these essays, the first of which is called On the Sufferings of the World. The second is called On the Vanity of Existence, where the metaphysics is kind of taken for granted, and then he's trying to figure out kind of what follows from this view. And you don't even really need the metaphysics to understand.
No, you don't. Right. It's pretty straightforward. But there is this sort of pregnant kind of question that I had at the end there that you helped me out with a lot, which is, what does he mean by will? Like, because obviously he doesn't mean individual will for anybody, unless that wasn't clear.
Yeah.
After all that you said, like, this is not agency. Before we dive into the essays too, what I wanted to say was that, like, so I've never read Schopenhauer before, and I only had I think I'm only familiar with him from other people quoting him all the time.
Yeah.
But of those people, Borges is probably one of the biggest, right? Like, Borges clearly was a fan, or at least very influenced by Schopenhauer. So it was kind of fun seeing in these essays like some ideas that Borges we had just recently talked about.
In fact, he quoted him at length in the two essays of Borges that we just read a couple episodes ago. So what did you think of these essays before we go through them? How are you?
I mean, I agree totally with you. Like, these are just incredibly clear and well written. I was dreading a little bit. I was like, why is our audience asking us to read Schopenhauer? I thought it was going to be a slog, and it's not at all. In fact, if there's anything that I would say that I had to do as I was reading them, is undo the fact that like a lot of this stuff is stuff that we've covered like quite a bit, and that like we've talked about and been interested in for so long, like the question of evil and of suffering, like just stuff that's just thematically been such a part of this podcast that it didn't feel that new to me. Then I would have to remind myself that this was written in 1850 or whatever, and so it was a pleasure. To read it.
And a lot of the stuff that we've talked about, like Camus and the absurd, and all of that stuff came after. I mean, even he is also borrowing from all sorts of ancient traditions, including Eastern thought, as we've talked about, and it is right in our wheelhouse.
Yeah, it very much was like Ecclesiastes,
right. Yeah. In fact, I wish, he doesn't have very kind words to say about Judaism, which is fine. But, Ecclesiastes is also part of the Old Testament. It's not just a bunch of rules and laws and the God, and Job is also part of it. So, I don't know why I feel the need to defend Judaism from its past.
Understandable. It clearly was probably had some, as a German in this time, some casual disdain for Judaism.
But isn't it kind of surprising that he could just be so obviously, because even when he kind of praises Christianity, it's not in any way suggesting that it's true. It's gesturing at something that's more correct than this idea of a jealous, angry God that is a stickler for rules and laws.
I mean, Ecclesiastes and Job were clearly ignored in his analysis of general view of Judaism toward the problem of evil and suffering.
But aren't you surprised that he could be, like, even with his, kind of backhand praise of Christianity, he's clearly just making it clear that all of this is bullshit. And even Christianity can't hold a candle to what he calls the Hindu philosophy in terms of like what's really going on.
Yeah, I don't know. By the end of this, I was surprised at how kind he was to Christianity. And I was like, there's a question I had. It seemed like Christianity just must have loomed I mean, it did loom large, especially being a Protestant in Germany at the time, I'm sure. But like I've read him as being actually kind of nicer to Christianity than
But it's a
I would have
patronizing niceness, I guess. It's not a niceness that implies belief in anything.
Yeah, but he seems to think that spiritually it gets it right.
So let's just talk about it since what are you referring to?
When he's talking about the spirit of the New Testament, the contrast which the New Testament presents when compared with the Old, according to the ecclesiastical view of the matter, is just that existing between my ethical system and the moral philosophy of Europe. The Old Testament represents man as under the dominion of the law, in which, however, there is no redemption. The New Testament declares the law to have failed, frees man from its dominion, and in its stead preaches the kingdom of grace to be won by faith, love of neighbor, and entire sacrifice of self. This is the path of redemption from the evil of the world. The spirit of the New Testament is undoubtedly asceticism. However, your Protestant and rationalists may twist it to suit their purpose. Asceticism is the denial of the will to live, and the transition from the Old Testament to the New, from the dominion of law to that of faith, from justification by works to redemption through the mediator, from the domain of sin and death to eternal life in Christ.
No, but you got to finish that sentence.
Yeah, when taken in its real sense, the transition from the merely moral virtues to the denial of the will to live.
Yeah.
Like even ascribing that the New Testament is preaching a denial of the will to live, like I don't see it.
Yeah.
And it seems charitable.
Yeah, I think he is reading a mysticism and, asceticism that is more characteristic of Christian theology than certainly Old Testament Jewish philosophy, although there's plenty of mysticism in Judaism too. But I guess I didn't read it as in any way subscribing to Christianity or faith as a true path, but rather just saying it compares favorably to the Old Testament.
Yeah. So I was just more surprised because of my the base ideas that came. But he says when he's talking about his philosophy later on, he says it is therefore really at one with the spirit of the New Testament, while all other systems are couched in the spirit of the Old. And then he goes on to say, in this sense, then my doctrine might be called the only true Christian philosophy. However paradoxical a statement this may seem to be, may seem to people who take superficial views instead of penetrating to the heart of the matter.
Right.
So he's definitely saying that this is, most people misunderstand Christianity.
Yes,
This is something.
Right. He has the most unorthodox view of Christianity, both in his time and I think probably still today. But I think he thinks it can, if you really get to the heart of it. And, you see this in a lot of people who talk about, who are Buddhists or who are, they do find affinities with Christianity in a way that they don't find affinities with Judaism, because Judaism is more earth-based, it just takes for granted that we are who we are and just trying to figure out laws to make that go as well as possible and honor.
Right. And there definitely is more mysticism of that sort in the New Testament.
Yeah.
And even like Joseph Campbell, right? He sees in the Christ figure.
All right. So should we go into the essays? I think maybe a good launching point is his critique of Leibniz. So the idea that evil or suffering is negative in character, like it's the absence of happiness and well-being, he thinks it's actually the other way around. That suffering is the constant, because we're constantly striving, desiring, the suffering, first noble truth here, right? And pleasure is the momentary and often disappointing ceasing of that suffering before it just starts up again.
Yeah. I want to read the first sentence because it's so good. unless suffering is the direct and immediate object of life, our existence must entirely fail of its aim.
Yeah.
Which is just like just such a great way to like ring it off.
Yeah. Each separate misfortune as it comes seems no doubt to be something exceptional, but misfortune in general is the rule. And that leads into the discussion of Leibniz. So he wants to, and this is, you find this in the antinatalists who I feel like we've mocked. And I actually think
you have. Remember, I'm
you're a
secretly
secret
antinatalist.
Antinatalist.
With whale acrasia.
Yeah. But, and I actually do have some disagreements with Schopenhauer here. Not on the idea that we're always dissatisfied and always trying to change. There's a lot of suffering and agitation in continuing to try to get what we want and never being satisfied when we have it, either because we want something different or because we're bored. And he talks a lot about boredom in both of these essays, especially the second. But like he has a line where he says, for anyone who thinks pleasure might outweigh the pain of life, compare the respective feelings of two animals, one of which is engaged in eating the other.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's sort of unfair.
It is.
But it's a great rhetorical device to use there. I mean, in general, I wanted to say that this beginning part in his critique of Leibniz, he lays out these ideas that I don't know how obvious it might have been to people back then, but it's something certainly that psychologists have like taken and run with, that pleasure is not nearly as pleasant as we expected and pain very much more painful. Mm-hmm. So he has immediately this bad is stronger than good idea that like if you're trying to like in the abstract say like, okay, let's have a balance where we have like a dose of pleasure and a dose of pain, the bad is kind of worse than the good is good.
Yeah. And the bad is like it sticks around, whereas the pleasure is we barely notice that we have it before we're on to the new striving,
on to the next
new
one,
suffering.
I really love this part. I'm sure we've all had thoughts like this. That the best consolation in misfortune or affliction of any kind will be the thought of other people who are in a still worse plight than yourself. And this is a form of consolation open to everyone. But what an awful fate this means for mankind as a whole.
Yeah. No, and that's right. And, I think he also thinks that in some ways, we're all kind of one, like with other animals, with other, he's a very big animal welfare advocate. And you can see that in these two essays. But I think if you think of us in a more unified way, all being just manifestations of this will, that's a terrible thing. Like, it's like my shoulder hurts, but it doesn't hurt as much as my knee. So I can feel better about my shoulder,
Yeah, right. Totally. I wanted to ask you at this part, like he does sort of build this, suffering sucks. Life is full of it. And he does kind of almost build, I wouldn't call it utilitarian by any means, but he does say like, look, it all boils down to sort of material pleasure and pain. And then he says, like for humans, we can kind of experience more varied, sundry kinds of pleasure and pain because of our cognitive faculties. But he does very much seem to be building a case for like all suffering and pleasure boiled down to, I don't remember where he has just like a list of things. It's like you have sex, eat food, feel good in your body.
Or feel bad in your body and then just momentarily like have that go away and then some new.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the blind spots, and I don't know if it's blind in his other work, but it does seem like friendship and a kind of love that isn't just dependent on sexual desire, the joy of having children. He thinks, if we really had to rationally calculate like the costs and benefits, like we would never do it. Like this is a great example of how we're just, we're kind of compelled to do things in ways that we don't understand. But like, I don't know if he's right about that. And I do feel like there's certain maybe more durable positive aspects of life that he ignores, which actually is, that really gives a kind of incomplete picture, at least at first glance, of what he's talking about. And you can say, okay, well, love is just, nature tricking you into wanting to reproduce. It's like, well, whatever, but it is still like a great thing. And maybe it's not like just, okay, my knee stopped hurting, but now my ankle hurts or something like that. It is something that lasts as much as it can be frustrating and as, in all sorts of ways it can go wrong. There is something nice and somewhat lasting about just being with family and how that feels. Now, I say this as my daughter's I'm about to drive her this weekend to college for the last time because she's a senior, and then I don't know if she'll ever live at home again for any period of time. So in that sense, maybe it's not, and I'm going to be heartbroken by that. But, I wouldn't trade raising her for anything.
I feel like as I was reading this, like I thought this is where you would go, like that you would be resisting this whole beginning bit of him being such a pessimist because of how I know that you think. Like, even though I, in general, clearly experience a lot of happiness in my life, like when I reflect on it, I sometimes like come to this conclusion that life is worse than not living, but you don't. And so I thought you would be like a little more resistant. So I think it's obvious that upon reflection, everybody would admit that life is not worth it. And he says, and in any case, even though things have gone with you tolerably well, the longer you live, the more clearly you will feel that on the whole, life is a disappointment, nay, a cheat, and that it promised so much and then performed so little.
Yeah. He has a great line about two men. So he says, if two men who are friends in their youth meet again when they are old, after being separated for a lifetime, the chief feeling they will have at the sight of each other will be one of complete disappointment at life as a whole, because their thoughts will be carried back to that earlier time when life seemed so fair as it spread out before them in the rosy light of dawn, promised so much, and then performed so little. Like how many songs have been written about that, like glory days and just the kind of, and so there's something true about it. And it's the main reason I don't go to reunions is I don't want to see people who I remember being at the height of youth and attractiveness and who are now, I don't want to see that in other people because maybe it'll make me feel that myself. But at the same time, like I genuinely don't feel that way. I don't feel like life promised me so much and then was like a huge letdown once I got there. I don't think I thought life was going to be so tremendous in the first place. And I've been certainly hugely lucky. But like, I think it's both true, but missing something is how I would pronounce it.
They don't call him a pessimist for nothing.
Yeah.
So it's hard not to read psychology into philosophy sometimes. And in a case like this, where you're just like it seems like he was prone to depression. His father clearly had suffered in that way, and like you said, likely ended his own life. But assuming that everybody feels that way, I think is wrong, even if I'm sympathetic to it. But this is the part, and I like just bring this up like a little bit because it's not really what I feel. But before we were recording, I said to you that there was a little bit of this flavor to me sometimes that it was like, oh, I'm saying something really deep in his writing. And it came at this moment where he says, I shall be told, I suppose, that my philosophy is comfortless because I speak the truth, and people prefer to be assured that everything the Lord has made is good. Go to the priests then and leave philosophers in peace.
Yeah.
That at that point read to me a little bit like, oh man, I'm just telling the hard truth, man.
You can't handle it. Like, go to your stories,
Yeah.
Yeah. And yet there's so much that resonates. Like when he talks about like, okay, there are these times where we're not like, we feel healthy and we're, we have enough money to feed ourselves and, we have family, we're not chasing after like women or whatever, but then he says, if we ever go through that stage where we're lucky, our needs and desires are met, we suffer from crippling boredom. He says, if the world were a paradise of luxury and ease, a land flowing with milk and honey, where every jack obtained his Jill at once without any difficulty, men would either die of boredom or hang themselves. Or there would be wars, massacres, and murders, so that in the end, mankind would inflict more suffering on itself than it has to now accept at the hands of nature. Then later he says, like, life presents itself as a task of maintaining itself. If that task is accomplished, what has been gained is a burden, and there appears a second task, that of doing something so to ward off boredom, which hovers over every secure life like a bird of prey. That's so good. I think that's right. He probably could experience this firsthand because he did have most of his like natural needs.
Yeah.
And then I was like, wait, so why am I not happy? Oh, I'm fucking bored.
I mean, this is like, how dare he not give props to the author of Ecclesiastes,
Yes.
who basically starts off exactly that way, where he says, I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure, enjoy what is good, but it proved to be futile. I said of laughter, it is folly, what does it accomplish? I sought to cheer my body with wine and to embrace folly, my mind still guiding me with wisdom. I expanded my pursuits, I built houses and planted vineyards, I acquired men servants and maidservants, all that stuff. And then he was just like, felt like everything was meaningless.
Yeah.
Like that's the boredom that he's talking about. And I think it's right.
Yeah. I feel like the Greeks also were well aware of this. What we'll do to ward off boredom is brutal and violent also if we will start wars,
I've been watching a lot of UFC
Yeah, right.
videos. Clearly I've been bored.
Yeah, so one of the things I was curious what you thought of, he definitely thinks human beings they're the most complex manifestation of this will, and because we have reason, that opens up whole new worlds of possibility. Some good, like aesthetic appreciation, I think he thinks can be a more durable escape from the ceaseless striving.
And hope. The ability
Yeah.
to hope, yeah.
And the ability to hope, even if it will inevitably be disappointed. But then, so he says that human life must be some kind of mistake is sufficiently proved by the simple observation that man is a compound of needs which are hard to satisfy, that their satisfaction achieves nothing but a painless condition in which he is given over to boredom, and that boredom is a direct proof that existence in itself is valueless, that boredom is nothing other than the sensation of the emptiness of existence. And we get that, right?
Yeah.
And the brutes, I think he thinks, don't feel boredom in the way that we do. But he says the brute is much more content with mere existence than man. Yeah. The plant is wholly so. But the man who finds satisfaction in just merely existing is just in proportion as he is dull and obtuse. So there's number one, they don't succumb to boredom, and they give themselves entirely to the present moment. That's the way that brutes have. That's what they have over us, and the fact that they don't worry about the future, they don't feel regret or remorse about the past.
Yeah. I mean, that strikes me as right? Like the ability to suffer seems directly proportional to our ability to think about the past and the present, like project our lives, to have like more complicated desires and hopes. And that definitely seems to me to be true.
And we will make up new desires.
Yeah.
Yeah, he talks about this, I think, in the second essay, that if we start getting our desires satisfied to ward off boredom, we'll just come up with crazier desires.
Yeah.
If you think of all the like filthy rich people in the world and the weird shit that they're into, and the fact that they don't seem much happier, if at all, than anybody else, that seems right.
Yeah.
I also like the way he says that's why we take so much pleasure in domestic pets, because we appreciate that in them.
They are the present moment personified, and in some respects they make us feel the value of every hour that is free from trouble and annoyance, which we, with our thoughts and preoccupations, mostly disregard. I mean, I have that thought often about my dog. What must it be like to live in the eternal present? Or at the very least, not too much of a window of past and present. My dog is pretty clever. So
yeah, I think my current dog less so. But although I love her, he picks up on, like, I kind of like, I'm a parasitically dependent on seeing her like that. Like just seeing her happy, taking her to the dog park and seeing just how much joy she has and swimming and playing with other dogs. Like I get a little secondhand, like, rush from that. And that is, I think he puts his finger on why we like them, but then he also is very indignant at how we treat them, which I also have a lot of sympathy.
Yeah. When I see how man misuses the dog, his best friend, how he ties up this intelligent animal with a chain, I feel the deepest sympathy with the brute and burning indignation against its master.
Well, he would have no beef with me.
If anything, you love your dogs too much.
Too much. Yeah, I think that's a pretty unanimous opinion in my house. But what do you think of this idea that human beings just can't be content with merely existing? Because I think that's super interesting, this idea that kind of proves how empty existence is. The fact that if all we're doing is existing, we're miserable. And yet it's the striving that causes suffering in a way. And so that just shows that the intrinsic value of living is non-existent.
It's no win.
Yeah.
Yeah. I honestly had just never thought about it in that specific way, especially the boredom part. Like, I'm like super sympathetic to this view that like this seems like a mistake. It seems like whatever caused this existence to come to play seems like a mistake, just because it's so poorly planned to never give us the thing that we think we want.
Yeah. And here he departs, I think, from some Buddhist and also Hindu philosophy in that, so much of practice is devoted at precisely that, being satisfied with merely being, because they think there is an inherent well-being that comes with just dwelling in being and the present moment or the now. And, Schopenhauer is undoubtedly familiar with this. So I'm kind of curious where he thinks that goes wrong. Or maybe it's just, well, if you need to do so much practice just to be satisfied for however long a period of time, assuming you're not fully awakened, like that kind of proves my point. I mean, maybe it's that, but
maybe he thinks that's like it might be the Band-Aid that works the best, but it is what it is trying to do is remove us from like what's clearly this way of being.
I guess so when he says the man who finds satisfaction in mere existence has to be dull and obtuse, that part, I mean, I think like there is this idea that there is a kind of inherent ease and contentment actually in us, but that we ruin through thinking and striving and constantly grasping and never being satisfied. But like if we could get to that place of mere existence, then there is an inherent kind of compassion, which I think Schopenhauer definitely subscribes to about the compassion part, but and a contentment. And I think he rejects that idea, and I think he rejects it because of boredom, length there.
Yeah.
And maybe, and you might be right.
Yeah, it's super interesting. It does seem like he will think at the end that the best we can do is treat each other well because we're all fucked, not because like this makes us happy.
Right. It's just we're fellow travelers in suffering. And he does say that, I think, explicitly at the end of the sufferings of the world.
Yeah. In fact, the conviction that the world and man is something that had better not have been is of a kind to fill us with indulgence towards one another. Nay, from this point of view, we might well consider the proper form of address to be not Monsieur, Sir, Mein Herr, but my fellow sufferer, soci malorum, compagnon de misère. This may perhaps sound strange, but it is in keeping with the facts. It puts others in a right light, and it reminds us of that which is, after all, the most necessary thing in life, the tolerance, patience, regard, and love of neighbor, of which everyone stands in need, and which therefore every man owes to his fellow.
Yeah, it's quite an optimistic way.
I know, it's an interesting way to get to the ethics that way, like to his ethics.
Yeah. And maybe that this is, what he attributes to kind of true Christianity, stripped of all the bullshit.
Right.
And, also just to recognize in terms of their faults, because he talks about their vices and follies. It's like, look, they may be particular to them, but we have our own as well. And there's just no point in being indignant about it just because they haven't shown up in us.
Right.
But they could, because we're all a product of this force,
Yeah.
this restless, striving, frustrated will. So, there is something that follows for just cutting everybody a huge amount of slack. Because you can feel the same kinds of things from the inside as that they do.
I actually was just watching an interview with Werner Herzog, who has done a bunch of films on inmates in death row. And he just said it so nicely. He was like, the one thing that I learned in all my talking to all these people who are on death row is that like they are a moment different from us. Like it is one moment that divides them from me. That one moment that went wrong. And that led him to quite a lot of sympathy, obviously.
Yeah, and he's a very kindred spirit, I think, to Schopenhauer.
Probably Schopenhauer sounded like Werner Herzog.
Well, yeah, probably.
Just read this in a Werner Herzog voice in your head.
Yeah, like that narration. But yeah, and certainly this idea of nature being this blind, violent, kind of ceaseless suffering.
It's just, and nature here is vile and base. I wouldn't see anything erotical here. I would see fornication and asphyxiation and choking and fighting for survival and growing and just rotting away. Of course, there's a lot of misery, but it is the same misery that is all around us. The trees here are in misery and the birds are in misery. I don't think they sing, they just screech in pain.
We've probably overplayed how happy Schopenhauer thinks animals are. I don't think he thinks they're happy. They just compare in certain respects better to happiness than we do.
Yeah, it seems like it equals out for him. They're capable of less suffering and less pleasure because they don't have the same sort of ability to know the anxiety of the future or the pain of the past is not available to them.
Yeah, that's a burden that they're relieved of, but they have other burdens.
Yes.
Most, urgently, the fact that a lot of other animals are usually trying to kill them. So you want to turn to On the Vanities of Existence?
Yeah.
So this is very short and sweet. Well, it's not that sweet.
One thing I wanted to thank our listeners for, when we were talking about doing Schopenhauer, I don't think we could find something that wasn't like long, but this was a great little package. So credit to them for making us get through this. The Vanity of Existence was great. My favorite line in this whole essay, this is why Kant is so great.
I feel myself coming around a little bit to Kant. I don't know what to make of that. And it probably means my life is coming to a close. Yeah, I was wondering about this one with you and your fear of death, because this one does talk about the fear of death as this kind of oppressive force, since we know that we're going to die. Another thing that makes us suffer more than animals. Like they have a instinctive need to avoid dying, but they don't think about dying in the way that we do. So I was wondering what you thought about that aspect of it. And the idea that time is this, like I think in the earlier essay, he said like a taskmaster. And this is a category that we have imported onto the world. I don't think he thinks it's real in the sense, but it is this thing that we project onto the world and then torture ourselves with.
Yeah.
It's one of the many things like that.
Yes. I mean, I love this because one, after having just done a new refutation of time by Borges, this discussion of the whole folly of everything where nothing ever exists but the present, in some deep way, only the present ever exists. And the way that he sets it up, he says, so you might think that then living in the present is the way to like be more happy. And you were alluding to this earlier. But then it's like, well, why? What's the point if that's all you have is this fleeting moment, this constant fleeting moment of never being, always becoming?
Yes, but so what I'm referring to is this like middle paragraph here where he says, every moment of our life belongs to the present only for a moment, then it belongs forever to the past. Every evening we are poorer by a day. Yeah. We should perhaps grow frantic at the sight of the ebbing away of our short span of time. Were we not secretly conscious in the profoundest depths of our being that we share in the inexhaustible well of eternity, or out of which we can forever draw new life and renewed time? I guess I'm kind of misreading it because he said we would grow frantic. Well, actually, I'm not sure I understand the sentence. We would grow frantic at the sight of the ebbing away of our short span of time. Were we not conscious secretly that we share in the inexhaustible well of eternity? Like, what does he really think that?
So I took this to mean that like we just secretly believe that we're going to get another round.
We're going to live forever.
Yeah, that we'll be able to like take another dip into this thing called existence. And if we weren't being driven by that secret belief, then we might actually be mad, like as in crazy, to see how rapidly our short span of time ebbs away.
Yeah. So he says, to our amazement, we suddenly exist after having for countless millennia not existed. In a short while, we will not exist also for countless millennia. That cannot be right, says the heart.
This is just like, if you were asking, did I resonate with this or like how I felt? Like, yes, anxious throughout it all and like nodding my head. Yes, this is what it's like.
Yeah, and denial of death stuff
Totally.
comes out of this exactly, But it's interesting because why is that a consolation, or even this delusion that we'll still be able to live forever in some sense? Why would that even be a consolation given how vain and meaningless and full of suffering and aimless striving? I guess just the
We
delusion
think it will
goes.
be. Yeah. Yeah. This is the lesson that fictional accounts of immortals give us. They're like, it's not great. Like, if you want to die, you want to end this all, and you can't. It's something you think you want.
This is, the anti-late natalist. They would try to present this, I think, in an absurd way where they would say people are deluded by how happy they are.
Yeah.
But that's like, I don't know if you can be deluded about how happy you are, but you can certainly be deluded about how happy you will be. And that is the thing that is the source of a lot of our striving and suffering, is always trying to make life conform to what you think will make you happy, when that's just not how it works. So he says, in such a world where no stability of any kind, no enduring state is possible, where everything is involved in restless change and confusion and keeps itself on its tightrope only by continually striding forward. I like the tightrope metaphor here. It's like or in another place, I think he's like, we're running down the stairs and we can't stop. We'll fall if we stop.
Like a man running downhill,
or running downhill, And then he says, in such a world, happiness is not so much to be thought of. In the first place, no man is happy, but strives his whole life with a supposed happiness, which he seldom obtains. And even if he does, it is only to be disappointed with it. As a rule, he finally enters harbor shipwrecked and dismasted. In the second place, however, it is all one whether he has been happy or not in the end, which has consisted merely of a succession of transient present moments and is now at an end. So
he presents this paradox really nicely, where it's like, very likely at the end of life, you'll realize you were always striving for the next thing, like the next thing to make you happy. And you realize that you spent your whole life doing that, never really focusing on the present. And what's the other option? Is to focus only on the present and realize that, like, none of these other things are going to give you happiness. But then you're left with, I think, according to Schopenhauer, is sort of like then a fleeting living in the moment that doesn't really give you the deep satisfaction either.
Yeah, and opens the door to boredom and will keep you back running downhill again.
Yeah.
And in any case, we're going to die. And it was all just a bunch of present moments that added up to nothing. And so what was the point of it all in the first place?
That was a nice insight, I thought, in the first essay. He says something about, in the context of humans being able to suffer more. He says that we're capable of summing up our pleasures and pains in a way that animals are not. And I thought that was quite insightful.
And we're capable, like, I think he's certainly not the first person to say it. You see it in Ecclesiastes and the passage you referred to earlier, but just this idea that happiness isn't what it's cracked up to be in our mind. And so that there is always like a little disappointment in getting what you want. Like it doesn't, it was such a source of driving motivation. And it kept you, in some ways, it was like an engine. There's like gasoline for your engine, and now you have it and you feel kind of empty.
Yeah.
Like the, post-coital kind of.
He really does speak of, like, as someone who has post-nut clarity. But for life.
Yeah. But I think that's, even someone as relatively optimistic as I am can see that the things that you are striving for, if you get them, I think this is probably maybe clearest in professional life, are you it's like, wait, this was the thing that was driving me for so long, and I put so much effort and stress into, and yes, that's why, like, the sentiment that he has here where he says human life must be some kind of mistake. It's just weird that we're so mistaken about what life should be or what will make us happy, that we are all fooled by this. And it doesn't matter how many, like, VH1 behind the musics you watch or whatever, like where somebody's like, and I had it all and I thought I would be happy and I was the least happy that I'd ever been. And yet it doesn't sink in. We probably live our life thinking, like, if this podcast does well, like, or what's the next, like, we'll get written up and whatever.
Yeah. And it's like, well, whenever those successes come, all you can think of is the next one.
Yeah. And why didn't this come earlier? Or, you see, and I think academia, this is certainly true, but you see it in a lot of professions, people who are successful well beyond what you even might try to achieve professionally, at least. And they're no happier than they've ever been. Like, they have these successes. They're still pissed off. They're still resentful. And it's a lot for some people, definitely, I think, more than others. But yeah.
But I should say, I was just reading a little interview with Steve Wozniak, co-founder of Apple. And he said in this interview, people were asking him like, oh, Steve Jobs kept his stock and you sold it early and like he was richer than you or he got more attention. And I'll just remember this quote. He said, I feel like I'm the happiest man in the world. Like my life has been just great. Like I've met like lots of wonderful people. Like I have enough money. And I do feel this. Like I'm not, as much as I intellectually sympathize with what Schopenhauer is saying and sort of in the abstract view from nowhere, like question the meaning of life. This has been a great life. Like I can't.
No, I mean, partly that's because we've been lucky, but I do think partly it's because, like, I don't think professional goals play as much of a role in our motivational structure as others.
No, we see a lot of that career misery of exactly the sort that you describe, where people are always, like, looking at somebody who's more famous than them or more well off or has more sold more books or has more fucking Twitter followers or whatever.
Yeah. And I don't think either of us are like that. I think we're in the like very low, percentile of, and probably that's why we decided to devote all this time to a podcast. Exactly. But also I think, it's like kind of my temperament to not be thinking I should be getting a lot more. Also because my dad was one of those people and I saw how it made him unhappy, especially towards the end of his life. So I think all this stuff is on a spectrum, and there's certain things where or at least some of Schopenhauer's descriptions aren't accurate about us in that sense, but then very accurate maybe in other senses.
I have a colleague who I love dearly, and I've always considered him, I would call him a system 2 optimist, where he's deeply by nature pessimistic. Like his immediate reaction to anything is like, this is terrible, this is the worst thing, but yet he's always trying to say positive things and like be an optimist for others. And I feel exactly the opposite. I feel like I am like at nature, like constitutionally, generally happy and contented. And then it's upon reflection, I feel like Schopenhauer's right. It just doesn't work its way into my like way of being, I guess.
Yeah, right. It's just your way of thinking.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I mean, you do have a kind of instinctive Buddha nature that comes out.
It's the happy Buddha.
Yeah, it's probably because you don't think.
I think so. You couldn't, I was going to say this earlier. I did get a whiff of condescension at saying something kind of like dumb people are happier because they don't think as deeply.
Yeah, or at least that they're less prone to boredom.
Yeah.
Right. Have we talked about that Curb Your Enthusiasm where Jeff, the manager, Larry's manager, is just on a plane and he's sitting next to Larry and he doesn't have a phone. He doesn't have a book. He's just sitting there.
Just sitting there looking straight ahead.
Looking straight ahead. And Larry's like, what are you doing? He's like, what do you mean? Like, I'm on the airplane.
He's like a psychopath.
Yeah, it's like, what are you, some kind of like psychopath? You're just gonna see, like, he can't even begin to imagine. And I think hidden in there is like you would have to be an oaf. You would have to be an imbecile, like the village idiot, to just sit there like that. But I don't think that's necessarily true.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah, I think there are people, though, who that's easier for because they're not contemplating like the deep miseries of life, But I also think, some people are more at ease in their body and they don't need to look at their phone all the time and they don't need to, I think that's an enviable state that doesn't necessarily imply that you're a dunce.
Right. There have been studies where people bring people into the lab and have them either sit Jeff style, like with nothing, or they can choose to shock themselves with and they'll choose shock over the boredom. Like, this is why I think Schopenhauer's really onto something with the boredom. All
right, maybe we should wrap up soon, but I want to read this great paragraph from The Vanity of Existence. He says that the most perfect manifestation of the will to live represented by the human organism with its incomparably ingenious and complicated machinery must crumble to dust, and the whole essence and all its striving be palpably given over at last to annihilation. This is nature's unambiguous declaration that all the striving of this will is essentially vain. If it were something possessing value in itself, something which ought unconditionally to exist, it would not have non-being as its goal. I guess the idea is that, human being is the most complex manifestation of the will to live, but in the end, it crumbles to dust and it is annihilated. This is nature saying that it's all bullshit, right?
Yeah.
And if it was valuable in itself,
It wouldn't be this way.
yeah, non-being is its goal. When he says that, I think what he means is like, because we all die, so
Right.
that must be the goal of nature. But there's something fishy about the way this is
I was about
presented.
to say, it's like, as much as like I like the vibe, this is a starting point for Nagel's discussion of the absurd. This is where you can say, what would make life meaningful? That we lived forever? Like, would that really make it? Like, I think that would raise more questions. Like, why the fuck are we living forever? So, like, I'm obviously believe that there is just, the universe is impersonal and indifferent. It didn't create us for meaning. But I do think we have the capability of having much more happiness and meaning given this finite existence. And some people have argued it's the very finiteness that gives us meaning.
Yeah. But he says the process of life is a process of disillusionment. And you start, full of dreams. You're, Betty at the beginning of Mulholland Drive, coming to LA, glowing, and then at the end, you're Diane at the end of Mulholland Drive. The reality has hit, and you're in the throes of death. And I think the best we can do is become disillusioned in a way that's kind of gradual enough that we are more in tune with like how things actually are,
Yeah, that's right. And like, you can accept these harsh truths, but it seemed as if in the previous essay, his ending on this note that like we should treat each other as fellow travelers in suffering, that optimism isn't here in this essay, but I think he could get there. I feel like if he had just one or two more good friends,
good friends. Maybe if he had gotten married, had children,
had kids,
I think that would have added maybe another just dimension. Like, I'm not even saying it would have changed his ethical view or his view on meaning and purpose. But it would have added something that seems to be lacking, at least in how he describes it.
But you're very right, by the way. You're very right earlier to mention that, like, he doesn't bring up relationships, he doesn't really talk about that. And it's very interesting because that seems like such a reasonable place to go when you're talking about what life is all about.
Yeah, and it's like, Aristotle focused so much about that. And I think he didn't like Aristotle. He only liked Plato of the Greeks.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons he didn't like Aristotle is because he was focused on this idea of happiness as this kind of goal. But yeah, friendship, honor, which, yes, of course, vain in one sense and meaningless in one sense, but also friendship, relationships, these are the things that can keep us going in ways that aren't delusionary. They aren't ways to stave off even greater suffering. They actually have some real value that just need to be at least acknowledged in the pessimism.
Yeah. Totally. And the one time he does bring up anything like you're mentioning of honor reminded me in the first essay, he makes it seem like, well, there is this other thing that we want as complex humans, which is acceptance from others. And we have things like ambition and honor. And he treats it like they're these little games that we made to try to be happy, but they're futile. And it does seem like he's missing. I think you can have access to all of the same initial facts and beliefs that he has about sort of the nature of existence and come at a very different conclusion if you just tweaked that.
Like there are senses of accomplishment that you feel, pride and certain things that you've done that it's not just silly and stupid. And yeah, is it what you imagined it would be? No. And often, sometimes where you're trying to describe to somebody, maybe a friend, of some accomplishment, and you start getting almost a little agitated as you talk about it, you know what I mean, to them. And it's like, because it's like you're realizing that what you're describing and feeling, I don't know, might be thinner. It might be less than kind of the way you initially set out to express it. And all that's true, but that doesn't take away all of the value of it either.
No. And if I look at the times that I'm felt most satisfied and most happy, they've always involved some sort of relationship to another person.
Yeah. I think this idea of life as a process of disillusionment, though, is interesting as someone who is getting older. There is a kind of disillusionment that is good. You know, like there are certain things you're not striving for anymore just because you can't do them. And also a certain wisdom you acquire, that there is a kind of contentment in the disillusionment.
Yeah.
Because it just makes you live more at ease than you were before.
Yeah.
You'll understand in a few weeks.
Long time from now. I can only hope that Schopenhauer got to that.
All right. Any final thoughts?
No, just that I'm glad we finally read Schopenhauer. And I think there's more essays that we could talk about in the future from this collection.
And maybe from others. All right. Thanks to our beloved listeners. Join us next time on Very Bad Wizards.
The great boss has spoken. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
Who are you? Who are you? A very bad man.
I'm a very good man. Good man. They think deep thoughts, and with no more brains than you have.
Pay no attention to that man.
Anybody can have a brain.
You're a very bad man.
I'm a very good man. Just a very bad wizard.